Can you hear my car squeaking? Man, I'm an amateur. I don't do YouTube, so I don't know what's happening. I also don't have anywhere to film because of my children, so I had to take a drive. So I think I'm gonna get coffee and gas, and then I'll find a place to park. I live in kind of a scary area. I'm getting gas in a sketchy area. I used to live around here though. I live in a better area now, but still close. A little scary. I don't know how to set up my phone. My steering wheel can't go any lower. How do vloggers do this? Trisha Paytas, I need your help. I went to a park and I'm trying to find a good place with good lighting and nothing is working. Why is the sun a million so bright? Oh crap. I was gonna get a coffee, but then I remembered that I literally brought Diet Coke, so I don't need the coffee. All right. If you didn't know, this is my long form testimony video. And I usually only do short form content, so bear with me. This is bad. I have my iPad for notes because I have to remember everything that I've gone through because my brain kind of like doesn't want to remember that. So hi, my name is Evelyn. Where do I start? Well, I was raised in a conservative Christian family. I've talked about that. We went to, I don't know if I would call it a mega church. It's kind of a mega church. For like the first 11 years of my life, I was pretty involved. I mean, as much as like a kid can be. I went to youth groups and did VBS and all that kind of stuff. Then we moved out of my the neighborhood that we were in and kind of lost some connections that way, at least I did. And we stopped going to that church because they were kind of big poopy heads. That's a whole other video though. I have 9 siblings, so I was raised in a very big family. My parents adopted 5 of them, 2 girls from Ethiopia and 3 boys domestically from Virginia. Growing up was kind of hard because of that dynamic. If you don't have adopted siblings, it might be hard to understand, but adoption oftentimes comes with trauma, and it can be really hard to work out that trauma in a big family dynamic, if that makes sense. So I did have a good childhood, no doubt, but there were struggles with that, inter-family struggles. Because yeah, I mean, you know, my 3 brothers were severely abused before we adopted them. They have lifelong medical issues and psychological damage and trauma from it. So it was difficult, you know, as like a little kid growing up with that. Obviously more difficult for them, but yeah, it was just it was rough sometimes. You know, there's that, but I still, like I said, I had a good childhood. And once we moved out of our neighborhood that we were in, we moved out to the country. We got 5 acres. We had a little mini farm, if you can call it that. And that was really fun. I liked it. I liked being out in the country. I liked that I could just walk around in pajamas and nobody would know because we didn't have neighbors. I loved it. My mom thrives out there. They still live out there. They love it. I mean, it was great. It was great to move out there. But one of the things from, you know, being homeschooled and everything and leaving the church community that we had, even though it was very toxic, I think was me feeling kind of like lonely, you know, being out in the boonies and not really doing much, not really having many friends because we lived so far away from them. So I think one of the things that my parents did was try and like get me into homeschool co-ops. I mean, they did this for all of the kids, not just me. We have a lot of children in our family. So there's a lot of like homeschool co-ops. There were youth groups. They really made an effort to make it so that I didn't feel as lonely, so that I could make friends. So that kind of started some of my political interest. I have always been a loudmouth and I've always wanted to change the world. Like since I was a kid, I either wanted to be like a missionary or I just wanted to make a difference somehow. And I'm the second oldest, and so I just felt like, you know, I have all these siblings that I have to protect and do something about. So that kind of led me to like, what am I gonna do in this world? And I was really interested in politics in general, probably from like 14. I don't know, I was pretty young. And I remember, you know, my dad picking me up from a youth group that was 30 minutes away, if not more, from our house, probably 40 minutes away. He would just talk to me about kind of the state of the world. And he's conservative, very Republican. And so I would get it from that perspective. You know, I knew that my dad was a Christian and a conservative, and so was my mom. My mom was never as political. She didn't really care. But my dad was. So anytime that I had any time with my dad to talk to him, a lot of it was talking about politics or religion, you know, what he had learned at men's groups or Bible studies or whatever he was doing about God. You know, he'd teach me about God, he'd teach me about the world. So that kind of honestly was a reason why I started to like politics a lot. I'm gonna take off my seatbelt. I'm sitting still. Anyways, so that was kind of me like starting to enjoy politics, at least. Now I was 14. I did not have access to much social media. I got a Facebook account when I was 13, and my mom let me access it through like her laptop. So I didn't have like a phone that I could just go on and access the internet. I didn't get a smartphone until I was 15, I think. Before that I had like an iPod, but it had heavy parental controls on it. So literally like anything that I Google searched, it would alert my parents what I was looking up. I had like restrictions on apps that I could and couldn't use. I wasn't allowed to download Snapchat or Instagram or any of these other apps. And that was back in like 2014, 2016, where this stuff was just starting for a lot of people. But I was still really young, and my parents kind of knew the issues with social media to an extent. So they didn't want me to like have free reign over those things. Ironically, it probably wasn't enough. I don't know if that's irony. Evelyn, that's not irony. That's not irony. Anyways, I think the first time that I had learned about kind of more liberal values was literally just from going to youth groups. And there's this one specific youth retreat, Christian youth retreat, that's in my area that they have it like 4 times a year, or at least they used to. I don't know if they still do it. And it's like an entire weekend where you go to a church, you're like locked in for like safety. I mean, we can still leave to go like shower and stuff, but you're locked in for like 3 nights. And there's like a weird kind of dynamic where you go through first is what they call a candidate, and then you experience this weekend of, it's godly in a way, but it also kind of, it feels a little cultish, okay? It's a little bit weird. And then subsequent times that you return, you're going for a worker. So you do like, you know, the kitchen duty or the cleaning and support staff is what they call them. There's like a whole section of kids that their whole job is just to pray the entire time. It was really fun. I loved this youth retreat. I went probably 6 times, maybe 5. I don't know. I went a lot of times. I absolutely loved it. And I met some really great people there. Some really great friends of mine. Even my first boyfriend at like 14, I met through there. And actually, ironically, I met my second boyfriend, my first long-term relationship, I met through there. And so I had this huge new group of friends that were all in this Christian conservative bubble. And something that happens is that parents try so hard to keep their children in a Christian conservative bubble that a lot of times it backfires on them. So they'll want their children to be around godly people, but their children want to experience the world and, you know, see what there is out there, and kind of also at the same time be edgy, you know, not be a goody two-shoes. You know, when you're in your early teens, no one wants to be looked at as the teacher's pet, or, you know, you want to be kind of rebellious in a way. And so I think that getting a bunch of teenagers together, and there were adults that supervised, obviously, but getting a bunch of teenagers together in like a church for 3 days, 4 days, whatever it was, and we were all sleep deprived, and the liberal ideologies were like a secret in this youth retreat, where like there were a bunch of people that would kind of secretly talk about their liberal beliefs, or like there was one person there who was like secretly trans, where she walked around in the church as a woman, but if you got to know her and became her friend, she told you she was really a man. I wonder where she is now, actually. So you were kind of like in this cool clique if you were like if you disagreed with the authorities, right? If you disagreed with the authorities of the churches, with the authorities of these youth groups, and that made it all the more interesting and, you know, kind of tempting for the young children. So I think that's where a lot of it started for me, was just being in that atmosphere and wanting to be different from the authorities that were in my life at that point, but also even, you know, some of the teenagers. You know, we were given this, you know, I don't want to say higher level teenagers, but that's kind of how this youth retreat worked. So there were teenagers that were like over us, that were, you know, older and had gone to this youth retreat multiple times. They were kind of like a camp counselor almost. And those people were always, at least outwardly, the perfect Christian conservative kind of teenager. I don't know how to describe it. I'm sure if you've been there, you know. So yeah, you kind of wanted to rebel against those people. And at the same time, as a kid, you have a lot of empathy and you just want everyone to like you. That's a big thing that I've noticed about kids, is their whole thing, especially liberal ideologies, is to just be nice. And they don't usually care if being nice is telling the truth. They don't care. They just want to be nice. They just don't want people to get mad at them. And I get it. When you're a kid, it's hard to not be liked. So that's where I think I was introduced to a lot of this liberal ideology, from those people. And obviously you meet friends at places like that, and then you start to hang out with them outside of there. So like I said, I met my first and second boyfriend there. My first boyfriend lasted like 3 months. My second boyfriend was my one, besides my marriage, he was my longest relationship. So we really got along. We were best friends. And he had already had an established friend group and like presence in the community in our city that was kind of like the punk people. I'm trying to describe this to people who might not understand. I feel like some people, like, you just don't understand. There's this underground scene of like punk, emo, alternative kids, really, you know, 14 to 21, sometimes even older. And they're in a lot of big cities, but specifically in my big city, I met a lot of them through a different youth group that I started to attend with my then boyfriend. And I met one of my really close friends for a while. We loved him. He was, you know, we were all kind of like the Three Musketeers. We went around together everywhere. And I had an amazing time. We did some crazy things for sure. We loved to go around and, you know, take pictures in abandoned buildings. We would go to like haunted places and, you know, take pictures there. We would go to shows. That was another big thing that really ramped up the leftism in me, was going to punk shows. The punk scene is overwhelmingly leftist. I'm sure that's kind of obvious to a lot of people. So being in those spaces, it is basically just a requirement for you to be a leftist. If you have any type of right-leaning views at all, you either shut up about it and hope people don't find out, or you're like mobbed and kicked out. So I, at that point, didn't really have political views besides I supported gay marriage, I supported trans people, trans rights, I liked marijuana, I smoked a lot. I liked cigarettes. I started smoking cigarettes when I was like 15 or 16. And I thought that all that was cool and edgy. I was pro-choice for sure. And I was kind of becoming anti-Christian. I still called myself a Christian at that time, but I was not really a Christian, you know? It's getting so hot in my car. I was a Christian in name only. I didn't act like a Christian. I didn't read my Bible. I didn't pray. I didn't do anything. I just said I was a Christian basically because I was raised Christian and I wasn't yet ready to give up my faith. So that lasted for a couple years. This was my first real relationship, lasted I think a little over 2 years. And for a 15, 16, 17-year-old, that was pretty long time in my opinion. And one of the reasons why I broke up with this man, who honestly was and still is a really great person, was because the leftist ideologies had started, like, I had started to believe them. I talked about this before. Instead of saying I believe them and kind of pushing the no, you don't, that doesn't make sense voice back in my head, I, at this point, had started to actually believe them. This was in 2018, a couple months before I turned 18. I decided to break up with him for many reasons, but one of the reasons was because I thought I was bisexual. And I was afraid that if I didn't go out and explore that I would regret it for the rest of my life. Like, if I ended up marrying this guy, I would regret the not experiencing that part of me. Which is ridiculous, I know. Anyways, so I broke up with him. It was really hard on me. Almost immediately regretted it for like a week after I broke up with him. Because it gave me a sense of freedom that I hadn't had growing up, but it was also scary and kind of lonely, and I didn't know what was going on. And because of that distress that I was in, I think that definitely made me, I don't know a nice way to say this. I became kind of a hoe. I immediately got a Tinder profile, and I immediately had intercourse with a lot of people. And from my Tinder profile, ironically, a couple months after I had turned 18, I swiped right on my now husband. But at that time, he didn't really like me too much because I was a crazy leftist. I mean, I had started posting about gay rights, about trans rights. I had started yelling at people who were pro-life. I had started making fun of them on the internet. I had started picking fights with people on Facebook, posting things on Facebook. And I moved out of my house a couple months after I turned 18. So my parents were kind of shocked at a lot of this, to be honest. But at that point, they weren't as conservative as they are now. So they were kind of still in that, like, this is shocking, she's a little crazy, but like, oh well, whatever. So I still had a great relationship with them. I still talked to them quite often, but I moved to a bigger city. I rented a room from a very sweet older woman. She's not that old, but older than me. And I started working at a dog grooming facility. I was trained in that, and from there I got even more leftist because apparently the dog grooming area of life is very left-wing. Well, at least in my area it was. So I made friends with a lot of people there, and that pushed my leftist ideology more. At this point, I was still good friends with who now is my husband, but we weren't dating or anything. We were just friends. And I met a girl through my job, through my dog grooming job, and we became best friends. We were inseparable. We hung out all the time. We got drunk and smoked weed together a lot. We went to a couple protests together. Through this whole time, I knew that I was bisexual, and I had explored that already. But this girl was not. At least she said she was not bisexual. So our relationship, for the most part, was very platonic and very, like, I don't know how to say it. It was very just easy. Like, we just did normal people things, except for the smoking weed and getting drunk. That wasn't as normal. We just did those kinds of things together. And this was all, again, pre-COVID, by the way. It gets crazier when COVID comes about. So I'm just having a bunch of fun with my friend, who later would become my girlfriend. Having a bunch of fun with her. And at the same time, continuing to go to the punk shows in the scene where, again, if you have any slightly moderate or right-leaning belief, you better watch out. They'll probably mob you, dox you, shoot you. I don't know what they'll do. They'll probably do something fucking crazy. I'm sorry. Keep fast forwarding. My now husband, then friend, started dating someone. I had secretly been in love with him the whole time. So that was a big hit for me, for sure. And I was even more crazy. I keep saying, like, I got crazier and crazier, but I did. Like, I should find my Facebook posts and put them up here. I was psycho. But it got really, really bad when COVID hit. I had a boyfriend. I don't even know if it's worth mentioning. I didn't even really want to date him. I'd had a boyfriend, like, through the fall of 2019, I think. I broke up with him because I wanted to be with my now husband. My now husband still had the girlfriend, so that wasn't gonna happen. But I really wanted it to happen, so I wanted to be available for that. So I broke up with him because I was like, I didn't even want to really date you in the first place. I kind of just did it because I don't know. I was bored. Something like that. Okay, it's getting too hot in this car. So I'm gonna drive back home. Well, I'm cracking one open with the boys by myself. Look, this is Kenneth. Can you see him? It's literally so hot here, and it's only 70 degrees. I think it's just because my car was like baking directly in the sunlight. And I couldn't open my windows because I'm scared. Because what if people hear me? I'm only consenting to thousands of people online hearing me. I'm not consenting to regular people in life hearing me, okay? I just realized that this whole time you can see the pouch that my son sprayed all over the ceiling. I promise I'm not a gross person. That's because I have a child. Anyways. Also, I'm like a big fan of the Maha movement, but one thing that you will not get me to stop doing is drinking diet sodas. Do as I say, not as I do. It's the cream soda Dr. Pepper. It's so good. I forgot to mention before, one of the things that started me wanting to be rebellious too was the music that I was into. The music that, hold on. The music that my older sister, I love you, introduced me to. It kind of like made me want to be rebellious a little bit. I still love them, okay? Some of you might know, my favorite band is My Chemical Romance. It will probably always be My Chemical Romance, but if you don't know, put a picture of them here or something. I don't know. I fell in love with them, and that made me fall in love with music like that. Now they make, I don't know what you would call it, emo music probably. It's alternative music. I was looked at as an emo kid for a lot of my life growing up, like early teens and stuff. I was the emo kid. So that was another thing too. Like I was already feeling kind of ostracized because of how I chose to present myself. The eyeliner, the band shirts, the chokers. I'll put a picture or two. It was hard to feel like an outcast. But the problem is that I did it to myself. Like, I didn't have to look like that. I chose to look like that. Not that it's bad. Like, I think that the alternative style is still really cool. I do like the alternative style. I personally don't really do it anymore because I have children and I don't care to look like that anymore. But I still do like the alternative style. So that, I just figured I should preface everything by saying that, because that is one of the big things that I always forget that started a lot of my, it didn't start the leftist indoctrination necessarily, but a lot of people who listen to those bands are very left-leaning. So when you build a community around these bands, you're ultimately going to meet a lot of leftists. But it's not just the alternative music scene. I want to make that clear. Your child could be like the biggest Swiftie in the world and still be introduced to a ton of leftism. Even in a lot of like Christian music circles, still a ton of leftism. So it's not one thing that will indoctrinate your children. You just have to really pay attention to them. Okay, I'm getting ahead of myself. So when I was moved out of the house, because I had all this newfound freedom, started doing more drugs. I even did, I don't know if I can say it on YouTube. I was really into drinking, really into weed, really into having sex with random people. I was a hedonist to the max. And I also started dabbling in witchcraft. So I thought that like witchy stuff was so cool. That's a big trend nowadays, to be a witch. I believed that if I did it the right way and if I did it long enough and hard enough, that it would actually have influence. I specifically tried not to do like black magic, but I started out just like with normal witchy stuff, still going to punk shows, still, like I said, getting drunk, still like going to parties, hanging out with a bunch of people who were very left-leaning. And a lot of that was spurred on because of my, like the hole in my soul that I know a lot of people were feeling around me, because a lot of my friends made music and a lot of it had lyrics like that, of just feeling like you're empty, feeling like you don't have a purpose. There was a lot of suicidal ideation, a lot of self-harm, a lot of depression, a lot of anxiety, a lot of SSRIs. Like the group of friends I was around, whether my inner circle or like outer circle, we were all, I was never on SSRIs, but I was depressed. I self-harmed for a very long time. I was suicidal. But I think a lot of the suicidal ideations and stuff were spurred on by who I was around. So I want to kind of skip past to COVID. So COVID happened. I was a dog groomer, so we weren't considered essential. So I got not laid off, but whatever happened, I stayed home and I got money from the government. Woohoo! So during that time, I actually was one of the people who my regular pay that I got was not given to me. I was given like way more than I usually get paid. So I all of a sudden had way more money to just sit home and do nothing during COVID. I kind of liked it, obviously, but I was dating someone at that time who, I don't even want to like mention him. It'll just be brief, because he was an asshole and he was cheating on me the whole time, and he just used me to get out of his grandma's basement during COVID because he like moved in with me. Screw you. You know who you are. But he knew where to get. So I got really into that for a while. And the George Floyd stuff happened. What was that, like May of 2020? That was the most radicalizing moment for me. So I had already been a leftist. I had already been screaming at people, already done protests, already been violent with my words, all of that stuff. But the George Floyd situation, it like ignited something in me. And I became the most annoying person that you've ever met. If you think I'm annoying now, you should have met me in 2020. You guys would have all hated me. I hated me. So I started going to protests, started posting all over social media, started fights with my family, because at this point I didn't really talk to my family a whole lot about politics. I knew that they were more conservative Republican, but I didn't think that they were Trump supporters, right? At least not like diehard Trump supporters. So once I found out that they were in full support of Donald Trump, I freaked out on my family. Freaked out. There was one day where they were all together and I was texting them, and a couple of them said something about like something pro-Trump. I don't even remember what it was. And I like flipped out at them in the text message. I was like screaming through text, fingers rapid fire. And so that's when they kind of, I think, understood exactly how crazy I had gone. Because again, I had moved to a different city. I was like 45 minutes away from them. I didn't see them very often. They only saw what I was posting on social media. So at that point, I was kind of a lost cause because of how deeply indoctrinated I had been. And the George Floyd stuff, everybody knows. Cities burnt down. I went to protests. I didn't burn anything down, but I went to protests in cities that were eventually trashed. And at this point, I had started, or like shortly after this, I had started dating the girl that I had talked about. She said that she was thinking that she might be bisexual too, because she was in love with me, basically. Obviously. How could you not be? So we started dating. I talked to my mom about it. She was very, I don't want to say supportive, but she was like, okay, that's your choice to do. Good, I guess. I don't know. I could tell that she didn't really want to piss me off because I had been such a bitch. Dating that girl didn't last a super long time, which I told her honestly that we would probably end up breaking up and our friendship would be ruined if we started dating. Lo and behold, I don't talk to her anymore. But the summer of 2020 was when I started dating her. And that was also when I started dating the guy who's now my husband, who had been my friend through all of this, because he finally broke up with his girlfriend and said that he was in love with me. So I had these two people in love with me, and I loved both of them. So what did we decide to do? Yeah, so we were all kind of dating each other, kind of. It was very weird. There was also another person kind of involved that I'm not even gonna mention his name or anything, but we did that for a little bit. Eventually that kind of fizzled out for a couple reasons. We didn't really end up dating for that long. So then it was just me and my now husband, and we were leftists. He started getting into black magic, literally like the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn, something like that. If you know, you know. It's very scary stuff that he was into. But so this was all happening, you know, we were still leftists. I was still being crazy all over social media until March of 2021 when I found out that I was pregnant with his big brother. At that time, I was very pro-choice, very, very pro-choice. I sadly considered abortion with my first son. If I had not had my then boyfriend supporting me and actually being happy when I showed him the pregnancy test, I might not be where I am now. And that is a scary thought. So that's a big reason too why I say that men have a huge role in the abortion thing, because if I didn't have him and his support, might not be here. Through getting pregnant, I knew that I had to kind of rekindle my relationship with my parents, I think. I ended up talking to them a lot more and going to their house and just discussing things. They were very nice to me. They would slightly poke at me about things like politics and religion and stuff like that. And it eventually started to kind of get to me. I knew that I had a new life inside of me. And I saw him, my son, at 11 weeks doing like flips in my uterus. Like, he was so active, we could barely get a good picture of him. And I saw that he was a little human. So that kind of started some questioning about being pro-choice. And I remember one of the things that kind of started really pushing me was one of my friends had made a Facebook post saying that she was pro-abortion, that she was not pro-choice. She didn't care if people called her pro-abortion because that's what she was. We're seeing a lot more of this nowadays. I commented very nicely, hey, I'm on your side. I'm pro-choice, right? I don't think we should be calling ourselves pro-abortion because we have to recognize abortion is like a hard decision. We shouldn't be saying it's a good thing. Like, we want access to it, but we shouldn't be celebrating it, you know? I was jumped in those comments. I had people, like her friends, telling me that I was brainwashed by white men, telling me that I had internalized misogyny, that I probably was going to be pro-life soon. They were right about that one. But literally just because I said I think that we should call ourselves pro-choice and not pro-abortion. That was one of the things that I was like, hey guys, what are we doing? What is happening right now? That's kind of insane. And there were plenty of other little things like that where I started to realize these people are insane. And if these people are insane, I'm insane because I believe the same thing and I act the same way. I'm just as crazy. And one of the things that kind of turned my mind around on Trump, which I'm not like the biggest Trump fan. I've never been the biggest Trump fan. I voted for him. I would vote for him again over Harris, but that's beside the point. But something that made me stop thinking he was a Nazi fascist was literally just like my mom showing me like full clips of the things that he said instead of just the tiny little 2-second clip that people had been spreading around saying that it was racist or misogynist or whatever. And I was like, oh, yeah, I guess I can't really defend that anymore because I understand what he was saying now. The other thing was the aforementioned witchcraft and black magic stuff became very scary. It was something where I had started, because I did acid and mushrooms too, I had started having very crazy experiences because of those drugs, but then because I was also heavily influenced by the spiritual world and what I was doing with witchcraft, it followed me in my regular days too. There were times where in my house that I used to live in, I would see things, I would hear things. Some people might say, oh, yeah, it's just because, you did acid and that permanently damages your brain and now you're hallucinating. No, I am a firm believer in the demonic realm. I am a firm believer that this stuff is very real and that you can dabble in these things very easily. So that was another thing that kind of pushed me back to God too, was like recognizing how real these evil forces in the spiritual realm were. I was like, well, if these ones are evil, then there's got to be the good one too, right? And then just seeing the craziness of the world through the eyes of someone who was a new mother. I mean, I was like 6 months pregnant when I finally just said, F this, man. Like, I cannot keep going this way. I cannot keep pretending that it's okay to kill children in the womb. I cannot keep pretending that men are women. I cannot keep pretending that Donald Trump is a Nazi fascist. Like, I can't do this stuff anymore. So I kind of like came out as a conservative pro-lifer on my Facebook page and my Instagram, and the amount of people that had previously said that they loved me, that I was one of their best friends. I think I lost probably 85% of my friends. The only friends that I kept were friends who were either apolitical, which was like 1 or 2 of them, and then a couple of the friends that I had made through my husband that were kind of left-leaning, but they weren't the psycho lefts. They were more like the tree-hugging hippie lefts. I was slammed across all social media. I was banned from coming to shows. I had one guy literally stalk me for years, like cyber stalk me for years. Like, he would follow me around, make new accounts to follow me. He would harass me. He made posts about me. He actually, by the way, just tried to friend me on Snapchat. Don't know what that's about. So he's still apparently around, still thinking about me. This man is crazy, by the way. I mean, I won't go into it too much because I don't want to like shit talk him, but there was something wrong there. And he was someone who I had like really gotten along with, and he was in a band that I really liked. I still enjoyed that band. And so like to see that coming from him, like, yeah, it was hurtful. I mean, these people, I was still the same person. The only thing that happened was I started making different mouth sounds that they deemed to be so bad that they all just immediately hated me. There was one of them stayed my friend and asked me questions about why I left and asked me questions about my life now. And we're actually still acquaintances. I wouldn't say we're friends, but we follow each other on social media. He comments occasionally or likes my stuff sometimes. But it was a really rough time. I went through months and months of not knowing where I fit in. I was at the end of my pregnancy. It was a hard time for me physically, obviously. Hard time for me emotionally. The only thing that I could think to do was to run back to God. So I did. I became a very devout Christian for a very long time. I gave birth to my son. I married my husband. We decided we were going to have a traditional relationship where he worked and I stayed with the children. And I really started to feel a calling to protect the unborn. That was my biggest mission. That still is. I have a very big heart for unborn children. And I just said, you know what? I've gone through a lot. These people hate me, and I know that I'm going to get so much more hate if I do what I feel like I have to do. But number one, okay, what? People hate you? People killed Christ, okay? Like, Evelyn, you'll be fine if people say mean words about you. And number two, babies are being ripped apart. You'll be fine. So in early 2022, I started my TikTok page. I started talking about pro-life issues. I started debating. I met an amazing community of friends. I started a nonprofit organization with my friend Andy in 2022. Our goal is to teach people how to debate in online spaces and educate people on abortion, what it is, what it does, who it harms, just general stats and facts about abortion, and also tangibly help mothers in need as well. But our biggest focus is education. And that is something that I have put my heart and soul into. It was rough starting out with Plan. You know, we had different lives and so many things were going on. So this year we finally actually got official nonprofit status. And right after we got nonprofit status, Charlie Kirk was shot. And up until that point, I had not given up on my activism, but I hadn't really been debating as much, and I hadn't been doing as much for the nonprofit. I just was really focusing, you know, I just had my second son, so I was really just focusing on my family and posting occasionally, but not that often. Watching Charlie Kirk get shot turned my life upside down. I cried for days, and I didn't even know the guy. I had an anti-abortion sticker on my car. I made my husband take it off because I was terrified for my life. I had people threatening my life, saying, "You're next." And then seeing the people dancing on his grave really woke me up to the battle that we're fighting and that we have been fighting. We're fighting evil. We're fighting spiritual evil. And I decided enough's enough. I'm going to take this seriously. I'm going to take my protection of the unborn, my spreading of the gospel and of conservative values so much more seriously, because I was scared at first when they shot Charlie Kirk. I was scared for my life. But I know, just like Charlie knew, that if I get taken out doing pro-life activism, I know where I'll be. I know that I'll get to see my Savior face to face. We don't lose. Something God Logic said when he found out is that we don't lose. We can't lose. We either live to spread his message or we die and we're in his presence. That's a win-win. There is no option to lose. This is kind of getting away from my testimony, but that's kind of where I'm at now, where I have such a fire lit under me that I am going to continue this until someone's going to have to physically stop me. I'm not going to stop. So yeah, this has been kind of a sloppy video. I am really bad at talking linearly, long form, because I just go in all these rabbit trails and talk about other random things. So if you've stayed, thank you so much. If you have any questions, you can put them in the comments and I'll try and answer them. I might make another video clarifying some things or expanding on certain parts of my testimony, because there is so much to talk about, and I tried to just give you kind of the brief overview of what happened in my life. I could talk for hours specifically about what God did in my life. Giving me my first son was just one of the many things. So yeah, if you want me to talk about specifically other things, let me know. If you want me to start doing long form content in other ways, also let me know. I want to do this. I want to spread the gospel and help little babies and lead them away from slaughter. That's what I want to do with my life. So if you want to support me in that mission, that would be so amazing. Like, subscribe. I don't know. I'm not a YouTuber. What do they say? Like, subscribe. Love you guys.